Welcome to today's episode of Speak Greasy. This season is all about featuring some exceptional women in the F&B industry, and my guest today is one of the stalwarts who has opened in enormously acclaimed and fantastic Japanese restaurant that is now in Mumbai and Goa. If you haven't been, you have missed out big time. Izumi, and welcome to the show, Naresha. It is so amazing to have you here, and welcome to Magazine Street Kitchen as well.
Thank you so much.
And I know you generally don't do a lot of all this media stuff, so I am very privileged to have you here with me today and to spill the beans on this crazy journey that you've had, clearly. So, but let's get right into it. I believe you started your career in fashion retail,
Yeah.
and then took a break and ended up opening a Japanese restaurant. I am not one to judge because I also moved from tax and accounting to F&B. But tell us your journey and how this switch happened for you.
So I was in garments, and garments is typically a 12 to 14-hour day, which I thought was crazy, not possible to do if I had a child. And then it was many years of working that one. Anil and I were partners. We used to work together in that. And then Ilhan came along, and that's when I decided to take a pause. My interest was always food and travel. So there were I enjoyed cooking at home. We're a family of foodies, Bori Muslim as well as Khoja. My father's Khoja, my mother's Bori. So food is essentially the focus of all.
Absolutely.
The morning begins, you're deciding what are you going to eat. Lunch, before lunch is over, okay, what's next for dinner? Which used to annoy us because, we've just eaten. Who's thinking about food after a full meal? But no, that was the conversation.
And you guys have the amazing Bori Thal, which is delicious. Yeah.
And just a little bit about Bori food is it's Muslim food with a lot of fusion. Bori food is not typically like what you hear, biryani or this. They'll do stuff, but they'll do a lot more. That's like now you have all restaurants that do fusion stuff. That's the kind of thing they follow.
It's very influenced by a lot. Yeah.
It's a progressive cuisine.
So how did that come into Japanese?
Anil was part of Zenzi. And Zenzi was shutting down because of all crazy influences. And I was ready to start working again. I thought I'd do something different. And in my head, I thought, okay, nothing can be as involved as garments, export. So I will get into food.
Because that's just a completely chilled out
that I
profession.
know. So I said it to Anil and he said, why not? These guys, before they go, connect with them and see if you can get something started. So I called, I said, okay, let's start doing some festivals, music festivals. And we did the wine and beer one at Bandra, Almeida Park. De Monte Park. And that's when I made my start. I wanted to do the famous Zenzi China box. It was an easy thing, I thought. But the guy there, the organizer, said, no, sister, sorry, Naresha, we have someone who's doing a rice bowl like that. How about sushi? That was my start.
Who's this guy? We have a lot to thank him
So
for.
his name is Shankar. He's part of some wine club in Pune. And I said, okay, I have no idea, but let me get back to you. I went home, I spoke to Annie, and he said, yeah, one guy used to make in Zenzi. Why don't you connect with him? I called him, and that's how he said, yes, ma'am, sure, why not?
Anything is possible.
So he joined me. He was among the 3 people that I started with. And he made sushi. And after that, everything that we did, I learned on the net. I used to read about it, we'd try. And the best thing about this boy, he's still with me, he is the most positive person. So no matter what I said to him, he said, why not? Sure, we will do. And that's why I am here today. We started, it was a roaring success. this little sushi and tempura counter. And that's when we got asked to do some office catering. And I had no clue. I said, okay, maybe like my own house party, we will do this. It worked out really good. This was a office party for some Japanese guests that had
Oh,
come.
wow, the pressure.
Yeah. And, by the end of the night, they were so impressed. They all stood up and did that arigato, bowing down. And I was like, yeah, this is damn good. And that's how it started. Then after a couple of years.
So this was when? This was which
This
year?
was in 2000 and Zenzi shut, right? So 2010.
Okay. I have to tell you a really funny story about Zenzi. So I used to work at PwC at Bandra Talao. And this was when Jay was still like courting me and being nice to me. So he would come and I'd be working these crazy long hours. So he'd come and pick me up and I'd be like, no, I need another hour. And he would just go to Zenzi. So he had this routine. He would come and go to Zenzi, and then either like I'd leave and then we'd manage to get dinner together there. Or so Zenzi was a big part of my sort of pre-F&B.
I think was
yeah.
like a start to bringing the foreign international experience and thing to food in India.
I feel like it doesn't get enough credit, actually. It's...
But I think they're very happy with that. If you ask Kani, he's like, no, stay out of the limelight. That's how it works for.
And would you do anything differently in hindsight, in terms of, before you even get to Izumi, but in terms of how you started, when you started?
Yeah, of course, I would have liked to have started this journey earlier, but I don't think, I just think the timing of everything has been perfect. Japanese 10 years earlier would not have had that sort of, I don't know, it was accepted by people at the right time. It just worked.
You've ventured into a cuisine that is one of the most technical, right? Like you hear stories about people who've spent like 20 years mastering sushi rice, the art of making like sushi rice or whatever, like knife skills and, all of this, right? And here you are with one of the most awarded Japanese restaurants that, pretty much are self-taught. And I know you went and did some sort of time in Japan and, learned certain sort of skills and techniques there. But this seems very contrary to everything that we've heard or I've heard about Japanese food. And so is this sort of a myth debunking kind of thing? Or, how do you explain this?
I wouldn't say that as in I give them full credit for the years of effort they put in mastering. They say anything to master for it to become muscle movement and, that sort of a skill, you need 10 years. So when I went there, and that time all I had was a small delivery service and the catering. And I went there and I told them about it. There was a bit of a like, what are you trying to do? You've come just to spend time and money in this, whatever, it's good. But
like they didn't.
They really didn't. They really didn't for a couple of reasons. Also because if I asked them questions about the produce or they said, you're not going to get that in India. That's not going to be possible. This is a different grade. This is a bit. But I kept going, kept writing my notes and absorbing as much as I could. The teachers were fantastic. That's something you have to give to them. The way they show you something in the first time and second time, and then you practice, you just kind of learn. They are fantastic teachers.
So
I mean, it's not a wonder Japan is where it was that many years ago, right? So,
and was this in English? Like, did you have to learn Japanese?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. I still don't know any Japanese. I'm very bad with languages, so I don't even try. Sometimes, people talk to me and message me very excitedly, guest message me. Narisha, in Japanese. I press Google Translate and say, oh, thank you. So good. But language, I just didn't learn anything. But the food, the techniques, yes, I worked very hard to get it. And every evening after the course would get over, We were allowed to stay back for an hour or, a little more time to practice. So that's when I used to order an extra fish of whatever we learned in the day, and I'd stay back and do it. There was one other guy from Argentina. He used to do it, but he came with pots of money. He had no plan. This was just a hobby. But he used to do it, and I used to do it. Stand, and then the teacher would say, now go home. Now go now, Naresha. But I learned. And then 6 months down the line, after we opened the second Izumi, I invited my teacher to come here and help me do something new. And when he came, he was very wary of. But then after he saw the whole thing, he said, you do tempura, you do yakitori, you do gyoza, you do ramen, you do sushi. He was quite impressed. I went in 2017. It was during the cherry blossom time. I fell in love with the place, and I think that just made the whole learning more special. I came back, I used to try the food, show the guys, the team. We were about 4 of us at that time. Show them, and we invited my current partner, Neil Murray, for a dinner with a few of his friends at the bagel shop one evening. Anil said, Naresha's learned this, why don't you just come and try? And they tried it, and he said, look, I'm in. Let's start this. So I said, okay, let's start looking for a place, but I need to go to Japan to learn ramen. So I went back, and I did that the next year for it was a 10-day course. And I worked for a few days in his ramen shop, my teachers. I came back, and that's when we were ready to start.
That was in which year?
2018.
2018. Okay. And how was that process for you in terms of, or were you not sort of as involved in the setting up of the restaurant as you were?
Everything.
Yeah.
Because before we left, I left for the ramen, and we had found the place, and they were going to start with the work. I had just discussed everything. I said, look, I wanted to look like a Japanese neighborhood cafe. This was the brief I gave the designer. And we worked, communicated, and...
This was a 16-seater restaurant that you
Yeah.
started with.
So we opened the 16-seater. I really didn't want to get it started. Every day I'd be like, let's push it to another day now. I was so nervous, and I had no idea. And I'd spoken to my son. Came, he said, looks good, but Mama, I don't think so. I'm like, oh.
Just the boost of confidence you need to get going.
So then I started it, opened it without announcing it at all. Nobody, not even Neil knew that we are starting. Anil and I just one day, we said, okay, I think we're all ready. Come on, we'll open the doors. And we had a few people walk in, and it's just organically how the word spread. I have no idea. One day, around the 4th or 5th of August, Anil came in, like flustered and upset. I said, come on, man, what are you doing? Hurry up with it. There are queues outside. They're giving me a hard time. Like, acha, oh. I'm like, okay, this is the fastest I could do. So in my 1-month training as a sushi chef, that was the speed I had. I just couldn't do it better. But in a very short while, the word got around, and I had a chef who used to call himself a traveler chef. He messaged me on Messenger and said, can I come and meet you? I have a lot of experience. I said, sure. And I interviewed him. He came and he did stuff. He did it way better than I did it. And I said, yes, you're hired. Come on, get behind the counter. But the amazing thing about that 16-seater place was guests got friendly. It was a community. People used to share food. This is very good. Why don't you also try from my plate? The next table would try. And sometimes if I felt I couldn't go around giving it to them, or there was a server short, I just said, okay, can you please just reach it and pass it over? That's how informal and lovely it was.
That's amazing. I mean, I think that, that's really, firstly, I think that's a great way to start or to, sort of dip your toes in the industry, because you don't go crazy on, investing in a huge space and do all of that. You kind of get the feel of it, and then, you can always...
you learn along the way. You just absolutely learn. I think when I started, it was an extension of my home kitchen. And then
So what were how long did you have the 16-seater before you
So even before we opened, the society had given us, like, you're not opening here. You just have to get out of here. So I went and I requested, I said, listen, give me a few months to recover this and we will move out. I promise you I'm not going to stay here long. So we had it exactly for 7 months. We worked it for 7 months. It really, it was like I learned to swim. And then I was more confident to do the other place. And Owen joined us then, and he offered his space to us. That's how we moved.
And so did you close one and then start the work on the next?
We started work on that in November. And as renovation goes, it took forever. So we only opened on the 4th of May.
This is 2019?
We opened
2019. Huh.
Yes, we opened 2019. We worked for 10 months. Then COVID happened and everything changed. But it was great.
And, then you sort of moved to a bigger space, which is about, 50 covers roughly?
56,
56.
yes, it is.
How did that change the experience for you as a chef in terms of, when you were saying that there's only sort of so much I can churn out and, that intimacy that you had from a smaller space, like how did that change for you as a chef?
I started to oversee a lot more. And then the bigger place had a lot more hot food. Sushi was one part of the menu, but there were other items also. So I had to be involved in everything. I moved away from the main sushi so I could do the other stuff. But I still remained, what do you say, just present.
Of course.
Watching, overseeing, and I still do that.
And you've now opened a second space in Goa.
This is the 3rd year we'll be complete.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah,
already?
we had it March 11th will be 3rd anniversary.
Wow. So 3 years after you opened,
Yeah,
the
that's
bigger
what we've
space in Bandra, you opened. That is something that I really want to know more about because, we've had restaurants in Bombay and we keep getting
And
asked to
fabulous
open.
ones.
Thank you. And by the way, when we were fitting out our Bandra space, Jay and I were like, we should go and like learn about the market here and this. I'm just like, screw it, let's just go to Izumi. Like we both wanted to, and so we were like, no. What I was saying is that we've grown in Bombay itself, and one of the reasons is because the idea of opening a restaurant in another city that we can't be present in just sounds impossible as a I feel, and it could be the control freak in me, but I think jokes apart, I think it's also these restaurants are very involved. No matter, there's never going to be an autopilot situation. You can't be everywhere, sure, but at least within the city, you feel like I can be there if I have to, right? I mean, you went literally like from Bombay, you went straight to Goa. Like there was nothing in between. It wasn't like, okay, let's do another one maybe in South Bombay. What sort of prompted that?
All of us like Goa. And during COVID, Neil and Owen spent a lot of time in Goa. So they were like, nobody knew where the world was going. So we why don't we have a place here? We will concentrate and put more time there. And since Goa is just such a favorite, it seemed like the natural.
I know, but that just sounds like a very dreamy thing.
No,
like,
but I swear to God, it turned out, it just worked out that way. We went ahead, did it. And how I managed to keep the place going, it was starting it. Most of my team that I had here, and I had them for a couple of years. So they were the ones that trained the new guys that came in. And new guys that came in stayed with me in Bombay. And the ones that were there were moved. I had a wonderful chef called Linz. He was there and he was going to move to Goa. That was the original plan. And another thing that his wife got a fantastic opportunity to go to the UK. So he had to leave just when we were about to open.
Oh.
Yeah, but then I have a young boy that joined, Nirav. And he got a little time to spend with Linz. And initially there was a lot of participation from me in that, and
You
many
spent
sleepless nights.
a lot of time in Goa.
Many sleepless nights, Gauri. Now that you ask, there's a constant feeling of there's one more that you have to, put into your head and work. But then you guys are all over the city with so much more.
I know,
So
but it's
there's a
in
lot
the
more that I have to
city.
learn.
No, it's in the city, and you can like still get into a car and go there. It's not like a flight away, or I mean, I guess it's just that sense of like if I have to go, it's there. I see. Also, we're not chefs, right? So, big difference in that sense in terms of maybe the involvement, but it's still. And it's not just any city, right? Like I've heard in Goa, it comes with its own challenges in terms of like manpower, in terms of, and I'm sure ingredients for you guys, ingredients is such a core part of what you do.
So the ingredients was not a difficult one. That's the one I sorted first, because I spoke to the vendors and they say, yeah, no problem. We're sending our stuff. We'll just add a couple of things. Didn't go before, chutoro, akami, things like that, and hamachi. But
Now, thanks to
not
you, it's
bit of-
available in Goa.
but I'm so happy to say that
But it never sort of crossed your mind to do something more in Bombay.
South Bombay has always been a very, very, wanting to do it. It's I think going to be a dream project eventually if I ever do it. It's something I want, Anil wants, most definitely. But he wants something smaller than what we have in Bandra. And let's see, as of now, nothing.
You talking about ingredients, right? Again, whatever, 5, 6 years ago when you started, has the whole sort of ecosystem changed for you in terms of what's available? How hard was that for you to, get what you wanted and to be able to deliver the quality that you wanted?
Yes. So when we started, it was difficult. There were 1 or 2 suppliers that brought fresh salmon from, it used to come from the Netherlands once a week, once in 15 days. So we had to get it and stock it. There were weeks when it wouldn't come. Every time someone traveled, I always had a list. Please, you're going, you bring this for me, please, please. And all my friends, family, everyone knew, okay, we are traveling, we are bringing for Naresha things back. And that's how we worked. Yuzu kosho, ingredients like this used to just come back with people in their bags a lot of times. But, and COVID was the worst time. COVID was a challenge for everyone. Everything became so expensive. The shipping was all,
Of course, yeah.
disastrous at that time. But after it opened up, there are so many more people in this business now. And now you have 10 of them that come and say, I have this, you want, I have. So it is now not a challenge at all.
I've heard you describe Izumi as the food at Izumi being sort of, approachable Japanese, right? What is it not, or what is it?
So initially, or you talk to a person that has not really eaten Japanese food or stays away from it. First, there was always a thing that it was 5-star food. And the second was that it's raw. I don't eat raw food. I don't eat Japanese food. But most of our menu, if you see, is hot cooked food. So that kind of eased a lot of people into, okay, you don't eat sushi, you can come and try the other things. There's ramen, there are rice bowls, there's gyoza, there's yakitori. There's something for all sorts of people's preferences. So it's been as slow as I am, it's been a slow progress. Introducing Japan, introducing Japanese cuisine and getting people to now it's become part of the Indian food scene.
It's definitely more
Seriously
familiar.
comfortable. There's food for Jains, there's food for the vegetarians. We have so much on the menu for vegetarians.
No, you're right. And even just the familiarity with Japan itself, right? So many more people now. It's become like the bucket list
It's
place.
the near bucket list.
Yeah.
It's about, I'm going now. And Japan has made it, Anna Airlines and all, they made it so easy.
There's a direct flight. I went for the first time actually last year.
And I've been doing this since I first went. I'm a person that doesn't research so much. So I don't know, I've just gotten lucky. It was just something that was destined to happen. So I found my school the first time I searched for sushi schools. That was the first name that cropped up. I contacted them and it happened. Airlines I looked up, I found. I said, oh, direct flight. I booked it. And I didn't even realize it was cherry blossom. So
when it's meant to be, it's
yeah,
meant to
that's
be.
what I believe.
How do you deal with feedback or criticism about the food? When people compare
Okay, when
to,
someone praises, it's a different thing. When someone gives you feedback, you do get a little taken aback. But I do respond to every feedback in whatever way, whatever small way. If I go into the kitchen and tell them, okay, this is what they thought, this is... My staff look at me sometimes, ma'am, I'm like, no. Let's just not ignore what anyone has to say, because every customer, it matters. So the feedback, are you talking about the Japanese?
more from a this is not real Japanese, or anything that where people who feel like they know the food better, claim to know the food better.
Yeah, sometimes I do have people that say that. I do have that. Certain things do differ because of the ingredients, like the ramen noodles and things like that. If I got that flour, it would just be a whole different experience if we did that. I'm very proud to say that we buy rice from India. Japanese sushi rice that is grown with Japanese technology in Himachal.
Are you serious?
Yes, and I'm seriously proud of that. The difference is marginal, but we're using Indian rice for something that's the most consumed item on our menu.
And so integral to Japanese cuisine.
Yeah, the price is the same because the people that are getting it are mindful of this.
So who are they growing this for? Are they exporting this?
No, they're growing it mostly for consumption here. The market is huge.
How did you go about training this team that you now have and have expanded?
First, I learned to do it well myself. And then I get them to stand with me, watch it, and then repeatedly doing it, they learn. They're very eager to learn. The boys that I've had are pretty much people that have come with just a basic, say, in their villages, 12th grade. And they come with a lot of eagerness to learn. And they don't have any preset notions, conditions, preconditions, training. So what I say, they accept. But I've also been very fortunate. I've had 3 chefs that have been with me. Like I said, Chetan, the guy who just messaged me and came and joined. So he has been very instrumental in training these people because he has about 25 years of experience in this. So he has made our utility boys sushi chefs. One of the finest guy I have now is a boy that joined as utility.
I have to tell you this. So just last week, we celebrated 14 years of the table and you did a cake cutting with the team. And everyone kind of was talking about their journey and those who've been there for a while. And one guy said, you know what? I'm the only guy here who's worked in 4 different departments. I started out in housekeeping, then I went to bar back and then utility, and now he's like a CDP in our kitchen.
Wow.
So you're absolutely right that this is how, a lot of the chefs who pretty much run the show in our restaurants have.
Yeah, I don't really have a preference whether I like someone who comes as a fresher or comes as this. I'm just willing to teach you. Let's see what you do with what we... And where you go and where you progress is entirely your thing, right? It's up to you. In fact, today, one of my boys, if I go off the topic, it's fine.
Yeah, of course, please.
So through the Japanese government, they approached us and they asked if we wanted to send one of our boys there because they sponsor a 6-month learning program.
What?
You can stay there, you learn there, you work in the Japanese restaurants. And one of our boys was selected, one of the chefs, and he's had the opportunity of a lifetime.
That is unreal.
Yeah,
What's his background?
Yeah, a chef, just a regular...
That is unbelievable.
Young boy, about 25, I think. He's about 25, 26. He was there today buying stuff to bring back.
Unbelievable.
And so it's just such a fantastic thing to happen to someone.
But things like knife skills, for example, because I went to these like knife stores to get knives for our
They are
chefs.
beasts.
They are. But there's like so much, and we were like, it was. I mean, you were a bit of like Jay was like a kid in a candy store, but at the same time, there's a lot, right? And there's so many nuances to everything. But how do you sort of teach for those kind of technical skills, right? Is it something that, again, learn on the job?
You just learn on the job. You watch, you get it. I feel they are fast learners. They watch and they just do it.
So it's attitude and
Yeah, very, very good.
eagerness.
Very hardworking. Yeah. Very, very hardworking. And the nice, this don't quote, but I just want to share it with you. People that are from culinary are always looking at from here, next. These guys stay as a thing they want to make as a, they are not
But
into
something,
jump.
this isn't, it's, I fully keep saying this. This is not about going off the record. Like, it genuinely, I see that I think they actually do make their way up the ranks, but they don't have an agenda to do that. It happens when they're able to like prove their capabilities and they're deserving. It happens for them anyway. I mean, our head chef at the table, I mean, we have Will, who's of course from America, but then we have the chef who's been with us since opening, and he started as a butcher, and now his name's on the menu, and it's just come from hard work, and he didn't speak English.
Loyalty
and
also.
Of course.
You'll remain, you'll
Of course.
rise. You'll just, if you're just constantly looking, like I have some of these young ones, we will stay for 1 year, after which we have to go. If we learn enough, we will stay. Otherwise, I'm like, what are you even talking?
No, but that's a huge sort of
It gives you a little
lesson.
bit of comfort also, no, that this person is not just
Yeah.
looking to jump.
But you must be having this issue of, having now, like, you being top of your game, people coming and sort of approaching your team.
Oh,
and,
for
like,
sure.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that?
So some you lose, yeah. But often I have these talks with them and I'm like, for sure, right now with a small amount of increase in salary or maybe a larger amount, you will be enticed. But there's a lot to be said about, consistency and being able to hold you guys for a later time. Right now, they want you because what you have is a great amount of R&D. I mean, you have the Izumi
Brand
you-
equity.
Not just the brand equity, you have the recipes, you have all of
Exactly.
that. You have that. So you're prime commodity to them. But after you've given it away, then what? I mean,
You're
just think
you're
about
dispensable.
that. Yes,
Yeah.
of course, and it's happened. It's happened. A person has joined for a month and a half, and after that they've gotten rid. So there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of holding the team together, but they really look at me as a mother. So the age helps. So you get away with saying things to them that, the young ones may miss. You do the nurturing,
The
it's a
wisdom.
family that, yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's the story across the board, honestly. And like you
It
said,
is. It is. You have to hold your family together.
How do you manage the division of roles between Anil and you? I mean, I think with Jay and me, it's it was a big challenge in the beginning to figure this out because it was the first time we were working together.
So Anil and I met as people that work together. That's how we got to know each other.
Okay, so you've
That's
been doing
how-
it for a long
But we've
time.
been doing it for a long time. But we don't know. We still haven't learned. We still have these crazy fights at work. And we're like, we embarrass ourselves at the end of it. But we have to say it. I have to say it. You said something ridiculous. It has to be retarded. But I handled the kitchen, a lot of the FOH, mainly all of that. Anil handles the bar and the finance.
Okay.
So we try. There are many gray areas, but we try.
And you're clearly, obviously, the face of the brand as well.
Yeah, but
So-
he's not interested. Just so
This is
often
like
I tell him,
Jay.
I said, look, you're witty. You just know what to say. You're quick at response. I'm not. But why don't you go instead of me? No, absolutely not. Like, okay.
I have the reverse issue where, not reverse, but I have a different issue where I again, for whatever reason, have sort of been put as the face of the brand. And so sometimes they'll say Gauri's restaurant, blah, blah, and then Jay's like, what the hell? Like, they haven't mentioned me. And I'm like, yeah, well, maybe put yourself out there more. I can't control how people perceive all of this. But
as you must have noticed, Anil doesn't go to the award.
yeah, I have noticed that.
Constantly begging them all, will you come? Will you come? Will you come?
But speaking of awards, what's your take on them? And, obviously now there's more and more of them sort of sprouting up. But what's your take on them?
No, I think it's a damn good thing. It feels great. There are wins that happen. There are some that you don't. You've got to just, if you're in that game, you've got to accept both ways. And
but is that easier said than done? I mean,
as of now,
like, do you get upset if you don't get the recognition that you think you should have?
A little bit. But
it is
so there is that acceptance and understanding that it's going to change. That's the nature of the beast. It is definitely. There was a time in the first year when we were third in Condé Nast, and so there's an incident to that one. I mean, we went. Anil again didn't want to go. I took my son, and Neil agreed to come with me. We were planning to not attend. He said, no, let's not. Why do we need to go for these awards and all? I don't know whether there's a spine to put on record.
Please, it's totally
but
fine.
then they called us and said, listen, you guys have to come. What do you mean? I said, okay, we will come. And then we went there and they read out 40 to 50. It happens in the tens, right? They're the first 40 to 50. So I was expecting my name to be in that. Didn't happen. My son looks at me. I look at him. I said, okay, 30 to 40. It went all the way up to 5. At that point, he says, Mama, are you sure?
Oh my God, I went through the same thing.
Are you sure you're in that? Maybe they've just forgotten about you. And as he finished saying that, they announced my name.
That's hilarious.
It was such a fantastic feeling. My God.
Yeah.
I was just 1 year into
That's fantastic.
the whole thing. And when we entered also, everyone was talking and they were all laughing. They were all part of, everyone's a group, clique. Me, absolute newcomer. They said, oh, one rookie has come here this time.
Not quite.
Yeah, that was just felt amazing.
No, I can believe that. And I think it's a great boost for the team. But what I always say is that, okay, then it's back to work and,
much harder.
Yeah, exactly.
Much harder, lot more expectations, lots to keep up with. Lots more people that are looking at you with that do you really deserve to be here?
Yeah.
Do you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot more scrutiny.
Of course, absolutely.
That's something that we just keep reminding our team that it's all great,
It doesn't
but then
stop.
it's a double-edged.
It's not even a given.
Yeah.
It's the effort you make every year.
Yeah, but this thing about a rookie. Have you ever sort of felt anything on a back foot or not being a woman chef? And I'm saying this because I've never referred to myself as a woman restaurateur, but as I told you earlier, this sort of I do feel that it is perceived still as a
industry for men,
boys club a little bit. And how do you sort of approach it, or how do you think about it?
Okay, so I did not have any experience at this gender inequality, gender difference, all of that, because I started off as my own boss, right? I didn't work anywhere. So I haven't had to climb up the ranks or face any sort of, even if it is
bias.
Bias is one, and the other one is a lot of women go through that where the people take advantage of the position and they have to leave jobs because of that. It becomes uncomfortable. Fortunately for me, I haven't, but I've heard these things happen. And the boys club and the so-called, of course, they're all young. They party together. They get together. There's that. Yeah. There is.
There's that.
So let's
yeah.
get together a lot more us. So
What are some of the other challenges that you see today, sort of 5 years into the business?
the same thing, keeping it consistently up, maintaining standards. Keeping the sashimi as fresh as it was the first day that we got it, keeping up with. Those are challenges and staying relevant.
Have you seen your guest sort of demands or requests change over the years? That there's a bigger acceptance of Japanese cuisine. There's more respect for what the chef's doing and sort of not trying to say, give it to me like this and without that and things like that. I mean, how has the guest evolved as far as...
Guests have seriously evolved. They know Japanese food. That's what we spoke about earlier. Earlier, a lot more came as first timers and very apprehensive. Now, there are a lot of seasoned people that come, a lot more. Everyone knows what they're coming to Izumi for. And requests, there are a lot more, I feel, dietary requests. There's
What's
so then I
the
usually ask
craziest
people,
customer request you
she
had?
comes with one adorable lady. She comes with one printout of everything she can't eat. It's huge. At the end of it, sometimes I smile. I'm like, yes, we will do something. And go inside. And if we are really very busy, and I'm like, why on this night? Couldn't she have picked another day? But my staff also sometimes, ma'am, why they come here? What are they going to eat in Japanese without soy sauce?
Yeah, soy sauce is a big,
I mean,
one.
no soy, no gluten, no nori, no. Fortunately for nori, we have soy sheets. There's
But then
something
they
for
can't eat
everything.
soy.
Yes, soy paper. Then Jen, okay, that's not such. Some are partial Jen. So they'll have the carrot,
The
they will
convenient
have
Jen.
wasabi, but they will not have the garlic. So there's a lot of, you're playing a balancing thing with them. Interesting. When the restaurant's not as busy, then I'm okay with it.
So what's the one thing that diners do that really drives you mad when it comes to sort of, anything about Japanese food or whatever?
They pick up the sushi and they fully leave it in the soy with ginger, with wasabi and everything like on Sevpuri. Load it all up. And then obviously you're putting that sushi in that soy and letting it soak. It is going to disintegrate. Then you want to pick it up with the chopstick and then you want to look and say, oh, but it opened up. Oh,
Make it again.
there are a lot of...
I thought you were going to say, oh, then they're like, this food is really salty.
No, so that's what we do. Soy sauce, sometimes they say, the soy sauce is not as strong. I say, yeah, but if I give it to you straight from the bottle, you won't be able to eat it. We have to dilute it. And I say it to people, it's a 50-50 dilution. Has to be done, otherwise you won't be able to consume it. Because not only is our sushi, it's got its own seasoning. We just don't give you a cucumber and this, so you dunk it in soy and everything. It comes with its seasoning. It doesn't really need the soy.
That's hilarious.
But then a lot of times I also tell people, I said, look, I'm still not so good with chopsticks. Just pick it up and eat it. It's absolutely fine. That's what they do in Japan. You'll go to a sushi, an omakase. They'll give you the nigiri. You just pick it, slight touch of soy at the tip, and then you put it.
Not
You
a soak.
don't need to load all those things.
I love that. What's the one dish that defines Izumi?
Hamachi truffle ponzu. And crispy edamame avocado for the vegetarian. So we were just doing a little bit of a sale reach, like what sells the most. These two were the shining stars.
Avocado for life.
Crispy edamame avocado sushi.
One trend in the restaurant industry that you want to ban?
Oh, I had this one, someone asked me a while ago.
Well, if you're not on Instagram, that
No, this was a part of some interview. A trend, not required. Maybe Pan-Asian restaurants is what I said. That many doing everything under one roof.
What's the most ordered dish on Swiggy from your restaurant?
Tempura prawn roll.
Tempura prawn?
Roll.
Rolls.
The
okay.
sushi.
Yeah.
The uramaki.
Yeah.
Tempura prawn.
Okay. We'll then now we know it. But listen, this has been really fun, and thank you for being so candid and sharing your story and your journey, and all the ups and downs, and more ups, thankfully, than downs. And I hope that stays that way. But it's been really fun, and I hope you do a lot more podcasts. And
Now I know I can do this.
thank you.